Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to the Get French Football News Show. I'm your host, Nathan Staples, and joining me this week are Eric Devine and Philippe Bargil. With the international breaks behind us for now and the long stretch into 2017 without one now, it's time to get to the nitty-gritty action of Liga, and to the delight of everyone, especially our very own Philippe Bargil. It was a feast of football in France, or a famine instead of that feast. All of this and Champions League talk after this week's headlines. Matchday 13 started off with an encounter of a higher quality than one might have expected, as Monaco's trip to Lorient was a first half full of attacking intent from both sides, but a lack of goals. The hosts were eventually punished for their poor finishing, Monaco earning a 3-0 win as Thomas Lemar and Gabriel Bachiller notched free kicks after Radamel Falcao had put the visitors ahead. Lyon's trip to Lille-sur-Légon notched their third straight win in the league, 1-0, as Maxwell Cornet's goal after 3 minutes saw the Lyon go to victory. Paris Saint-Germain recorded another win to keep pace with Monaco, 2-0 over Nantes, but will be sweating over the fitness of Angel Di Maria after the Argentine left the match with an apparent hamstring injury, although he is in the squad for the Champions League game against Arsenal in midweek. Montpellier continued their recent run of good form, coming from behind to earn a draw at Bastia 1-1, while Rennes will regret earning the same result at home to 9-men Angers. Toulouse continued their recent tailspin, losing 2-1 to Metz at home, while in the battle of promoted sides, host Nancy held off Dijon 1-0. Sunday's early match saw Guingamp welcome the return of former manager Jocelyn Gourvenec, but the Bordeaux boss will have been disappointed to concede a very late equaliser from Jimmy Briand in a 1-1 draw. Marseille hosted Caen in the early evening match, and the hosts earned a tetchy 1-0 win courtesy of Rolando's goal 10 minutes from time, the defender heading home as Caen struggled to clear a corner. And the weekend's final match was a bit of a damp squib, but Nice's somewhat sterile possession was enough to earn the leaders a 1-0 win away to Saint-Etienne. And that's all for the news, but remember, for all the latest headlines, head on over to our website at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com and follow us on Twitter at GFFN. We start in Paris this week ahead of a big week of Champions League football and a big week for the champions as they began with a 2-0 victory over Nantes. But Philippe, they're still not quite hitting that top gear this season in Ligue 1, are they?
No, it's the usual, just like against Rennes. The game against Nantes was pretty much a standard routine win with a goal that came rather nicely. Matuidi upping the pace on some occasion. Ball falling nicely to Jean-Kevin Augustin, goes beyond the defender, falls nicely to Di Maria, who dispatches it past Rioux. Then we've got Di Maria who goes off. Again, apart from his goal, not much really to report. A lot of set pieces where PSG do seem to be a bit suspect at the back, with not defending particularly, was not playing actually particularly well, but just being very very dangerous from set pieces. Kevin Trapp, who was deputizing for Areola, pulling off some decent saves. So no, not convincing. You have Javier Pastore, who came on. But then he had to come off, so he's not going to play against Arsenal, which is, I think we can all agree, which is good news for Arsenal. Angel Di Maria will be in the squad. Not really sure if he'll play, and I'm actually not even sure if that is good news or bad news for PSG or for Arsenal. We must, however, mention that Levin Kurzawa is not going to be fit for that game, and that's a huge blow. That really is a huge blow because of the impact he brings down the left hand side. So yeah, it's going to be quite interesting. But I watched the highlights. Maybe you'll be able to fill in, Nathan, as it was against Manchester United. of Arsenal not looking particularly good, but they do seem to rely heavily on Olivier Giroud, who comes up with the goods and in the air, where we don't exactly have the tallest of defenders. We don't defend set pieces particularly well, and if you look back at the corresponding fixture at the Parc des Princes early September, we had great chances. Cavani had loads of chances to make it 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, but just didn't take them. And I'm not quite sure what has changed since. So, what's the lowdown on Arsenal? Is it just me, or is it?
Well, I think the easy explanation is the Giroud goal was their first shot on target, and I believe their only shot on target. So that
must have been thrilled.
Yes, yes, it was a very good weekend for me. But Eric, let's focus on that game on Saturday. Emery left out all of his summer signings, and they all started on the bench. Obviously, Ben Arfa came on for Di Maria, but there are reports that Emery's been disappointed with their summer transfer activity, and that's why he left a lot of them on the bench. Is that some unrest? Is that a sign of how they have performed, or is that more a sign of what Emery trying to have a bit of a power struggle, do you think?
I think it's interesting to look at this. PSG had a decent summer. I think that the players they brought in, that's Meunier, Krychowiak, Ben Arfa, and Hesse, as well as Areola. Well, Areola returning from loan, that is, were never meant really to be starters. The makings of this team, with the possible exception of Krychowiak, the makings of this team were already there. Regardless of whether Emery wanted to change his system, PSG weren't bringing in a quality of player that were going to give this team a massive upgrade. And I think he's just not playing these players against, not in this particular example, not because he wants to prove a point or anything, but simply because they're not of quality. Even and perhaps that's come back to bite him a little bit. I think that you have to question with Di Maria returning from international duty whether or not he should have started the match on the bench. Serge Aurier was also active in the international period as well. So I don't know. I think he perhaps could have been a little bit wiser, but at the same time, I mean, what's he going to do? If he not always a tough opponent defensively, so he wants to be sure of getting 3 points, especially after Monaco had already done so the evening prior, and there just was a little bit of a gap in quality in that regard, and he didn't want to leave things too much to chance.
Yeah, and I think that was obvious by his team at the weekend. And you've mentioned it there, Eric, and I want to throw that question to Philip. He did start Angel Di Maria, despite him playing in South America, obviously, during the qualifiers, which is always difficult for those players returning to Europe. And he only managed to last about 38 minutes before coming off with a small niggle. It was a precaution, and he is in the squad, but it was a real risk playing him in the league, especially with that game against Arsenal around the corner. Is that more of a sign of how they have been playing in Ligue 1 and how much they needed a result, or is that a sign of he needs maybe a little bit more extra come January to make this really round out this squad, shall we say?
Well, it does seem easy that Unai for starting the same front three. Which actually he didn't, because Jean-Kevin Augustin did start in place of Cavani. So you could say, well, if you rested Cavani, who had to go all the way to Uruguay, why didn't he rest Pastore as well? So it's very easy to say he should have started Ben Arfa or Jesse instead of Di Maria. But I mean, yeah, it's always in hindsight, it's always extremely easy. Fact is, he did trust Di Maria to start again against Nantes. Will prove to be the wrong decision. I'm sure Unai will learn from this. I'm not even sure if it's a mistake. I mean, is it a mistake? I'm not that sure. So that was his decision. I did like, though, that he trusted Jean-Kevin Augustin with the reins up top. It gives him some match experience, and something that he will need if Cavani suffers a knock. Which, well, let's hope not in the future.
Yeah, and let's stick with Augustin. And Eric, he's someone you've wanted to see play for quite a while and give Cavani that rest. How did you think he did in this one?
I don't know. I mean, for me, it was a pretty indifferent performance from the youngster. I think that, he had a couple chances, but I couldn't really put them away. I think that not really set out to defend like they always do, especially playing away. Playing the likes of Gigi in midfield, I think that was a pretty apparent strategy from René Girard and company, and I think that that does show that while I do want Augustin to continue to have chances to develop and grow as a player, that despite my high praise for him, I think that there may be still a little bit lacking in his ability to perform at this level. And yeah, I think that's basically the long and short of it.
Yeah, and that might be an area they look to at January. But let's talk about that game against Arsenal and that's coming up in midweek, Philip. And it's essentially a winner takes all in the group, you would say, assuming that the final games don't end horribly for either team. But how big is a win and finishing top for Paris Saint-Germain in this one?
Well, the thing is, I think a 2-2 draw would be as much as winning the group. So the first leg, if you can call it that, finished 1-1. A 0-0 draw would certainly not suit PSG. But on the one hand, I was quite disappointed to see how Basel played against PSG, and I do still believe that it's not as easy a place to go to as is Ludogorets, the other side. So I'm not really sure if Arsenal will have a walk in the park on the last day. I'm quite confident they will win. But first of all, I think it'll be a draw. I just see this as a game between two sides that are supposed to be good but are not as good as they should be for Arsenal and for PSG, and I reckon 1-1 will be quite difficult to. It won't be that easy because I believe Arsenal have a very good goal difference. Well, goal difference maybe pegged back by PSG if they trounce Ludogorets or something, which I just don't really even see happening. I just don't feel like PSG will win some game 5-0. I mean, it has happened in Ligue 1 this season, but yeah, I think with a 2-2 draw, PSG will basically have their future in their own hands. What needs to be said is that PSG do need to finish first if they want to go as far as the quarterfinals in the Champions League. I believe that as soon as this side is going to meet someone big, someone who can actually play, who can actually defend, who can actually control midfield, I think PSG won't really have much of a chance. So it is quite important that PSG finish first.
I would respectfully disagree, Philip. I mean, I think that. Well, I mean, for example, you have the group with Atletico and Bayern. You have the group with Dortmund and Real Madrid. So, I mean, you could conceivably have Atletico and
Barcelona, Man City as well. That's another tricky one, regardless of which one you get.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily. I think that the knockout.
But let's
rounds,
put all our chances are on our side. From that perspective, I mean, you are more liable to get easier draws if you finish first and you finish second. And that is the whole point. Even though if you do have tough groups. I do agree. We could get a tough opponent, but we never really got that in those seasons. I'm not saying it won't happen, but mentally it is better to finish top of the Champions League group, which we did, and then just didn't last season. So I really do believe it's something we need to put the record straight in a way.
Well, I'm just going to go through the groups very quickly and say currently as it stands. Say if Paris Saint-Germain are currently technically second. So I'll go through who they could face in the next round if the groups stay exactly as they are, which will be Napoli, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid. Monaco wouldn't count because they're a Ligue 1 side, so they won't be able to face them. Dortmund, Leicester City, Sevilla. Other than that, if they finished first, they would have Juventus, Porto, Real Madrid, Bayer Leverkusen, Bayern Munich, Manchester City, Benfica. It's not really easy either way, is it?
Yeah,
it is strange that if you finish second, you might get Leicester, but you might get Manchester City.
But again, things could change in other groups as well. I mean, we do have three. What is it? 2 or 3 groups where top and second are quite tricky. But I would count that as being unlucky if you get them in the draw. But still, I mean, we should go in. France used to be a side that were absolutely clueless in European football results. I mean, it was 2 weeks ago. You had PSG winning in Basel. Thomas Meunier was a great volley. Monaco destroying CSK, and I think Lyon got a draw at Juventus. And a couple of years ago, this would have been absolutely unheard of. So, also in terms of coefficient, I mean, it is important for PSG to finish top. This should be the aim. It shouldn't be about, well, if we finish second, we avoid those guys.
It is an interesting conversation. I mean, Eric.
No, yeah, absolutely.
would you? It's a difficult one because if you finish first or second, it's essentially pick your poison. But would you go with the sentiment of getting a win against Arsenal? Would be a really big boost against a good classic European side that maybe helps them in the knockout stages with confidence wise.
Yeah, I think there's certainly something to be said for that, but. Arsenal themselves aren't in great form either. And I think that, and they're in better shape than they have been with injuries. I mean, I know Bellerin's still a miss and Cazorla as well, but they're not really a team that's necessarily in great form. I mean, they slipped down to I think 3rd or 4th in the Premier League now. Nathan, you might know better than I would.
They're 4th now. I will double check on that, but I believe they're 4th.
Who, Arsenal?
Yeah.
It is very close around that.
Yeah, they're 4th.
So I mean, yeah, obviously, I think it would be good to have a bankable win in their pocket, but at the same time, what's going to allow this team to make that jump? You'd say the same thing about their defeats of Chelsea over the past 2 years in the Champions League. A statement win. Well, they've had those. I mean, Chelsea is a team with similar European ambitions to those of Paris Saint-Germain. It's not enough, though, to beat your peers. You have to, if PSG really have ambitions, you have to beat teams that are, quote-unquote, above them. And, right now, that's, for me, the 3 Spanish teams, maybe Bayern and Juventus at a push.
Actually, even the 4 Spanish teams, because I think Sevilla would be no piece of cake to, contenders.
No, I'm not just saying that because they looked thoroughly dominant against Lyon. I think that they're a team that's really in good form, particularly with Nzonzi and Scudero. But anyway, enough digression. I mean, for all this talk about, PSG are new to the Champions League, a mental block, a way to make a statement, that really doesn't wash anymore. I think that this is the reason Emery was brought in. It's to improve this team's play in this tournament, no matter the opposition, and it hasn't shown up.
Because, I mean, are we honestly contemplating the fact that PSG will make will make their best Champions League campaign yet this season? Because I just don't see that happening. I just don't see them. I mean, even reaching the quarterfinals would be actually good, considering everything. Maybe that depends on who they meet, but I just don't see them being mentally there, or even technically, or in terms of game plan. When I just came on, and I just don't see them doing a major coup. Saying this, I don't see a whole lot of sides being absolutely amazing this season in the Champions League. Got to look at Bayern. Atletico were quite disappointing against Real Madrid. Not saying that they're bad or anything, but that a lot of sides seem to be struggling with new management this season.
And just very quickly, Eric, a quick word on Nantes. They've won 3 games all season. It was a very defensive display. They just don't seem to be moving in any quiet direction at the moment, do they?
I thought they had looked good in the Coupe de la Ligue about a month ago, but this lineup, again, was very defensive. I don't think we can really draw any big conclusions from this game. Let's be fair. Playing GG as part of a midfield 3 alongside GA, you've got Thomas. They can get forward. Jules Oloki's coming back into the side. There are some attacking threads you could grasp at there, but I really think that in general this team wasn't set up to get forward. I think there might be more to come from Nantes. I think that the return to fitness of Rongier, when that does happen, and that of Harit as well, can really get this team playing better. I do think their primary issue is they're a little bit starved for width. I think that Iloki, prior to his being injured, and he's back from a long layoff, had shown a little bit of spark in that regard. And I think that if he can come back into the side and allow the team to stretch play a little bit more, there's going to be more opportunities there for the likes of Stepinski and Bamu. So maybe more to come from that, but I don't think we can really take anything from a match at the Parc des Princes.
Yeah, it can be difficult for anyone.
That's the worst part, is that PSG almost made Nantes look not too bad defensively.
Well, they're not too bad defensively. I think
yeah. I wouldn't say they're horrible defensively every weekend, but against a decent strike force like Nice, I don't know. I just didn't think they could cope, and it just didn't seem like PSG were interested in smashing them.
No,
which is understandable given the circumstances, playing a massive Champions League game and all.
Yeah, and in fairness, not are struggling at the other end more than at the defensive end. But we'll move on to Monaco, who are another side that are looking for a big week in the Champions League. But they started their week with a comfortable 3-0 victory over Lorient that they had to do a little bit of work for, at least, Eric. And they maybe need a little bit of luck on their side to get this win, despite the heavy scoreline in the end.
Yeah, I think that the first half in particular was really entertaining. I think that you had Marveau playing as a sort of withdrawn striker with Waris and Mukanjo cutting in from the wings. There's a lot of good interplay there. I think that new manager bounce. Lorient showed a lot of good intent. Their finishing wasn't quite there, and then I think class just went out in the end. But some encouraging signs for Lorient. But kudos to Monaco for not conceding a goal and for taking control of the match and playing as a champion should.
And let's talk about some of their interesting players in this one, Philip. And I mean, it's Falcao will be that star name again because he's scoring yet again. That's his fifth in his last 3 games. And Thomas Lemar with a really good performance again. And Bouchillier comes and gets this goal. They've got some real depth in that squad now, haven't they? And some players are starting to really hit form.
Well, people are probably going to believe that I only talk about PSG, but they seem to have more depth than PSG in terms of attack. Only Cavani and young Kevin Augustin. For PSG, you've got Valère Germain, who had a terrific season at Nice. You've got Mbappé Pilotin, who's up and coming. Radamel Falcao seems to be coming back. Seems to be scoring quite a lot of goals. Not thinking he's having a wonderful, fantastic season or anything like that, but he is coming up with the goods. Still not actually sold out on Guido Carrillo, but we are starting to see that Monaco's strategy is bearing fruit. We had Thomas Lemar playing his first French cap last Monday, was it, against Ivory Coast? So yeah, a great, really good solid performance by Monaco. Another nail in the Lorient coffin, but you can't really blame them for losing to a side like Monaco, and it's so refreshing, of course. It's a bit like in Germany actually, where you have Bayern losing at Dortmund. You have Monaco and Nice, who are deservedly ahead of PSG, playing some good football. Because what was wrong last year was that PSG were winning games, but nobody else, and probably not particularly better than this season. But the West were just not winning games at all, which was the problem. This season, I mean, we actually have 2 sides who are interested in winning games every weekend, which is great.
Yeah, and Falcao coming on, his first touch being a goal, just shows you that the confidence seems to be coming back slowly to the Colombia. But Eric,
and Bouchillier as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
Busquets came on from the bench and scored.
yeah. Again, it's another. I think that might be the third time I think he's come off the bench and scored as well, which is great for him. But I want to talk about the defense a little bit, Eric. I mean, they've kept about, I think it's about 2 clean sheets all season before the last couple of weeks, and including their Champions League game against CSKA Moscow, they've kept 3 clean sheets. Is that a sign of their defense finally picking up the slack a little bit, or is that maybe the caliber of sides they've faced in the last couple of weeks?
I think it's a mix of both. I think that Gleek in particular had a fantastic match. He was part of my team of the week in the match review that Adam and I write. But yeah, I think you're getting more balance and more responsibility, and that Jemerson is continuing to grow in confidence. I think that entering this season, against those matches against Fenerbahce and Villarreal, Monaco looked very ropey. I was really worried about them this season. I think that the attacking talent was obviously there with the likes of Lamar, Silva, etc. But the defense looked a little bit ropey. And I think against a Lorient who are at home, playing under a new manager, playing freely. And again, let's face it. Akanji and Waris have been a little bit off the pace this season, but they're still players who have gotten it done in Ligue 1 in the past. And even Marveau to some extent, dating back to his time at Rennes. They're not exactly. They're not. That is, Lorient aren't a team that are a total washout. They have some intent and some impetus. So yeah, I think that this is they rode the metaphorical tackle, if you will, from Lorient and played well defensively and got a clean sheet that'll give them great confidence heading into this week's match.
Yeah,
you mentioned your team of the week, team of the weekend. You mean from this weekend? Yeah. Who did you put next to Gleek?
Rolando.
I will put Livchuk, who also had a great game at Guingamp yesterday, except for the equalising goal. Also, it was quite good.
Eric almost
anyway
led me on to the next point perfectly, and that's Monaco faced Tottenham in the Champions League on Tuesday night at the Stade Louis II, and a point will be just about enough to see them through. That will mean Tottenham won't be able to go above them, so they will finish at least second. So is this a case of trying to play for the draw, or did they try and play for another win? I mean, Monaco would just be happy getting through rather than finishing top, but Tottenham are in decent form. They got a good result of the weekend. What do you think to this one, Philip?
I think Jardim is perfectly capable. He's shown it over at least two seasons that he can play a defensive game, not being troubled at all, and play a boring 0-0 draw. We of course we do not hope that this is what is going to happen, but it is very much possible that Monaco can bore Tottenham out to a draw, be 4 points clear. And to be honest, I don't think it seems to be necessary. Monaco have a good defense. They have a good system. They can play a 4-4-2. It's a bit risky to be playing that against a decent manager like Pochettino. Decent players like Dele Alli, Harry Kane, and it won't be easy to score a goal past Hugo Lloris, who is a quality goalkeeper. So I don't think that's how he may play. I think he'll be more cautious than what he does against the likes of CSKA. Of course it would be, but yeah, it'd be quite disappointing. I'll be watching this quite closely. I'll be disappointed to see Catenaccio approach from Jardim. Hopefully, be a good game. But I'm very hopeful. I mean, I do think, just like Arsenal PSG, that this one will be a draw, possibly 0-0, but probably not as close in terms of chances and intensity.
Eric, what do you think in this one? I mean, we've just mentioned that a point would be enough, really, for them to go through. So, do you maybe sit back against a team like Spurs, or does he employ the same plan that they had at Wembley of sort of trying to play on the counter a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, why not? I know that, again, in that regard, DRR is a bit of a miss, given his physicality and ability to track back versus Bernardo Silva. But even once he had come off, Silva came on and did a decent job. I think that there's no reason you can't have it both ways. The form that the likes of Bakayoko and Fabinho are in to control that middle of the park, and versus the form of Spurs midfielders, I think that there's every reason to expect that Monaco could dominate the game, no matter how things are set up. And let's face it, playing on the counter, as you mentioned, that's going to play into Monaco's hands. Spurs need a win here. A draw won't be enough of a result, especially with Bayer probably likely to win against Cesca. So if those two results happen, that is a Bayer win and a Bayer win, which they'll know the result before the match. The match is being played earlier tomorrow. Then I think it'll have a lot of influence on how Pochettino and Jardim approach the match. Knowing that a draw will put them through, potentially, I think Monaco can have the pick of the game and pick Spurs off on the counter, because Spurs will be forced to come at them in all likelihood.
Yeah, and it's
amazing to think that Monaco maybe qualified for the group stages before PSG. Didn't think, should told me that a couple of months ago. Probably wouldn't have believed you.
No, I'm not sure if anyone would, but it's great news for them, and it's a great position to be in. That they essentially,
On the subject of Tottenham, I mean, they don't seem to be, from the highlights I'm seeing, they don't seem to be particularly easy to score goals. They don't seem to be as comfortable as maybe other seasons. I mean, is that what you experienced watching them this season, or is it just me?
They've been a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, I think they're still unbeaten. If I'm pretty certain. I'm gonna have to double check that.
Spurs,
but they've drawn quite a few games at the same time, and that is a sign of if even if you're playing poor, you're getting results. They've got Harry Kane back now, which is good. They need, for me at least, they need to start huming Son, who's been terrific this season. He made such a difference that West Ham game as well, and came on and won them the penalty, set up Harry Kane's goal as well. So they need to start him. If they don't, they're going to risk playing someone like Janssen up front, who's not quite adapted yet. I think he's much better on his own up front, from what I've seen of him at the past at AZ Alkmaar. It's a tricky one, I think. And Christian Eriksen's not in the greatest of form. They would, and they desperately need a win in this one, so they're going to go for it. And if Monaco play like Eric says, if they play on the counter, they're absolutely playing into their hands with the speed of someone like Thomas Lemar and Bernardo Silva in behind. Their centre backs are good, but they're not necessarily quick. Their full backs are at least quick, but if they're high up the field, it's going to be a real tough one for them, I think.
See all these names: Shadley, Lamela, Eriksen. They just don't seem to be, striking fear this season. And the only one who's actually creating something, getting into spaces, from what I've seen, was Heung-min Son. And yeah, he is. To me, he is the major guy to watch out for on tomorrow evening.
Should he start?
Should he start?
Just a note on that. I think it would struggle for Nasser Chadley to do that because he's now at West Brom. So I don't think.
Shit.
I don't think he would strike fear on anyone other than Burnley probably tonight. But we'll move on to a team slowly on the charges. They've won 3 games in a row, which is Lyon, who rose to 4th with a 1-0 win against Lille at the weekend. And Eric, should it have been more really in this one, or were Lyon a little bit lackluster again?
They still weren't at what they should be, given the talent they have. But I think there were a lot of encouraging signs from this match, actually. I think that Lille, particularly with the inclusion of your favorite, Nico de Preville, looked brighter than they have in attack. I've been watching quite a bit of Lille in the last few weeks, not necessarily by choice, but just by how Adam and I had divvied up the matches to watch. And I think that, his play and that of Eder gave Lyon's defense a pretty good test, but I think that Diakabi in particular played a really strong match. So I think defensively, the team looked good, and that to me needs to be the backbone of how this team evolve. I think that we look back at the losses to the likes of a team like Guingamp, that 3-1 defeat was just about a month ago now, and how poorly Lyon played defensively. Raphael and Nkulu just getting turned inside out by the likes of Jimmy Briand in that match, and to have a clean sheet, to have that confidence, was really important for the club. And so I think their encouragement is to be taken from the way that the defense played, especially with Jallet, my favorite, back now in training. So there's more to come in that regard. But in attack, yeah, I mean, Lacazette showed a lot of energy, was a willing runner, but really wasn't afforded a whole lot of chances. Cornet took his chance. I mean, it's good to see that. Good to see him being clinical. But on the whole, I like a little bit more from the attack. But going alone in the back four were really strong for me, and I think that's a positive to take into this match against Dinamo Zagreb. A little bit lesser opposition. Let that attack stretch its muscles a little bit, get a little bit more confidence, and then bring that into this weekend's match against PSG.
Philip, I want to focus on one player who obviously grabbed the goal and played reasonably well in this one. That's Maxwell Cornet, who continues to develop into a really exciting footballer, really, for Lyon. And what do you think to his performances so far this season? Is he someone that should maybe Lacazette go in the summer? He can fill the boots of alongside someone like Nabil Fekir.
Fill the boots of Lacazette or Fekir?
I would assume Lacazette would go, but Cornet still be slowly developing into a similar, another one of those impressive Lyon players like those two that I've just mentioned.
Oh, right. In terms of potential, you mean?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Not particularly. In terms of position, but there's something to some kind of level to be reached from Cornet, who I believe has given great performances. I'm saying about Lyon's win against PSG last season. But maybe a bit too few and far between. Actually, Fekir has not. We haven't seen the Fekir of his of before his injury, where it's absolutely extraordinary. So yeah, quite difficult to answer that question, Nathan. But it doesn't seem to be there just yet. But to me, his position will probably always be on doing some kind of a Rachid Gheza on the left wing. Eric, please don't kill me. And yeah, that's pretty much what I'm expecting of that player.
And Eric, you've mentioned him briefly in Diakabe, and he had another excellent game. He's only 19 for a couple more weeks, so it's crazy to think that the level he's playing at. But do you think he could be a real star for the future of this team?
Yeah, I think what he adds to this team is defensive solidity. I think that he's not going to be the sort of flash player who seeks to get forward, a la Umtiti or even Yang Mbiwa at times, but he's just a solid defender. And I think that in matches where Lyon are up against top class opposition, that he and Mamana, who's like-minded, make a great pairing for the future. You've got two young center backs who are willing to play as center backs. They don't, want to be a hot dog and get forward with the ball at their feet. They want to block shots. They want to get into tackles, and that's something that I think is really lacking a lot of times. I mean, we see Umtiti as being this player who moves and enhances his reputation, but is he really a center back that is of top defensive quality? I think Diakabe is that in spades, and I think he can be a real foundation for this team.
So the next Umtiti?
No, what I'm saying is I think they're very different players.
Oh, okay.
And I'm enjoying seeing him. He's maybe slightly what some people might say a more old-fashioned centre-back, maybe, that he's an actual defender first before a footballer, which is the opposite way around that we see more nowadays, but I don't want to have a minor rant about that. But we'll go on to the Champions League game, Philip, and it's a real throw of the dice, really, for Lyon, that they desperately need a win if they want to clutch on to their last bit of hope of possibly getting a Champions League place. Or do they just throw caution into the wind in this one and just hope that something slips the right way for them in the Sevilla-Juventus game?
Well, actually, something has to slip the right way for them, otherwise I think they're going to be out. This is a must-win game. I mean, this is basically not avoiding defeat would mean Europa League, which I'm not quite sure they're exactly thrilled with about. be it Olas or Genesio or anyone connected with Olympique Lyonnais. But Seville are going to meet Juventus, so one or the other are going to well, if it's not a draw, one or the other are going to win. I think it would be quite bad if Sevilla actually won that game, because then Lyon have to host Seville, they have to beat them, and they have to hope that Juventus don't get anything against Dynamo Zagreb in Turin, which is a massive ask. But no, I mean, yeah.
I was going to say that the easier path for Lyon to go through is to have Juventus beat Sevilla, and for Lyon to better Sevilla's result at home in December.
Yeah, that's the at least the easiest way I can see it from here.
which was only 1-0, wasn't it? I mean, it's not like
it's not impossible.
Yeah. No, it's not. No, absolutely not. But yeah, about tomorrow evening, it's obviously a must win. If it's if it's a draw, Lyon are out, and if it's win, then with a chance. If Sevilla don't win.
Eric, what do you think will be the strategy in this one? Do they throw as many forward players as they can? Do they try and play their natural game against a Zagreb side that they beat comfortably in the reverse fixture, and just then hope that there's a glimmer of hope for the next week?
I think they play their natural game. I mean, Zagreb are awful in the match at the Parc OL. That was Lyon playing their first experiments with that 3-5-2. You've got likely Fekir to come back into the team after his league suspension. Raphael, won't have to worry as much about tracking back. He can join in as an auxiliary attacker. There shouldn't be really any issues here. Even missing the likes of Ghazal, there should be more than enough for Lyon to win comfortably. I'd say at least 2-0 or 3-0.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, and let's hope that something, maybe just a glimmer of hope, happens in that Sevilla-Juventus game. Hopefully, Juve can pull out a result, and then it at least makes that final game exciting if Lyon can pull something out.
But I think we're still in the same frame of mind. I'm pretty sure everyone connected with the Club Boudoise have Lyon finish second and play a big game against some big European sides like, I don't know, Bayern, Barcelona, what have you. To please the fans, Boazes, and have an Europa League campaign. I mean, this is basically what they want. I'm not even sure it's about the money anymore. It's more about, we don't want to play all these games in the Europa League when we're going to be chasing the top three.
Yeah, and
you are fourth though. Actually, it is quite staggering to see how a couple of wins just puts you fourth, just like that.
Well, they are 7 points back a third. I mean,
yeah, so that's still already a gap. So point of not playing the Europa League, something to avoid at all costs.
Yeah, and if they can finish second, that's always extra points, that fabled coefficient at least. But let's move on now to the leaders in Ligue 1, and that's Nice, who got back on the horse this weekend with a win in Sunday's late game against Saint-Etienne, even without Mario Balotelli and Paul Bice. Philip, was this a showing after a defeat that proves that they are really going to be titled contenders for the long haul?
They were extremely lucky to get that win last night. Favre was quite defensive in his lineup. It looked very much like a 4-5-1. You had Cyprien Seri and Rémi Walter playing next to each other, very, very tight. And there were quite a few chances in the first half, but this had 0-0 draw written all over it. Given, I was more disappointed by Saint-Etienne at Nice. I mean, Nice are away. Saint-Etienne is not supposed to be an easy place to go to, but Saint-Etienne really do worry me in terms of attacking threats. It was a 3-5-2. You had Nolan Roux and Söderlund up front. Behind them, you had a midfield trio in that. Discounting the wingers, who were absolutely useless going forward in terms of crossing, in terms of getting forward. Malcuit probably a bit better than Mbengue. The three midfielders were Vertou, Silnaes, who was more holding midfielder, playing not too far from the back three, and the last one, I'm forgetting the last one. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not coming to my mind either. Carry on.
Cive.
Yeah.
And from all these players, I just don't see anyone actually looking like scoring goals, or who had a very, very clear chance midway through the first half. A header, point blank header. He puts it straight at Cardinal. Soderlund doesn't look like he can score either. And then you have the midfielders who just don't seem to be I don't know, making the impression like they can chip in with the goals if the forwards have an off night or an off day. You had Amuma who wasn't playing. Monet Paquet came on, and Beric was not playing either. So of course those three players are good players. Those three players can provide with the goals, and any side who has three key players who can provide with the goals, they're not playing, they're either injured or they're on the bench. You're going to have problems to score. But to me, Saint-Etienne really do need to invest in some kind of attacking threat. I'm going to go back from what Eric said two weeks ago about Montpellier. I would, I'd say that Montpellier's attacking threat is actually more threatening than Saint-Etienne's. It just Saint-Etienne just look bereft of finishers basically, and I'm quite worried. I'm not sure what you guys say. I'm quite worried about where this side, who has finished quite high up, has finished in Europa League places very often. These past few seasons, I'll come up with a record in just a minute. But I don't know what you guys think. But yeah, this seems to be some kind of ending to this kind of run.
Eric, what do you think to Saint-Etienne in this game as well? I mean, they've not scored very many goals. I think there's only a couple of occasions. What I'm counting: 1, 2, 3. 4 times this season, 5 times this season in all competitions where they've scored more than one goal in a game. And they were pretty negative again in this one. Is this a sign of just who Saint-Etienne are, or that are they maybe stuck in a rut now of with Galtier?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think that looking at the team, it is frustrating to see Galtier set up with 3 at the back. I mean, Malcuit's pretty adept at getting forward. Less so Mbenge. So it was I think overall a fairly negative performance. There was no real creative thrust. Obviously, with Tanan suspended and Monet Paquet on the bench, there wasn't that there. But I also do want to say credit to Lucien Favre. I think that he showed once again the amazing versatility he gets out of Willan Cyprien playing him at the base of a 4-3-3, whereas Walter might be the more natural choice to play as the most defensive midfielder. The pair of them and Seri really kept the ball well and kept control of possession. I think he said it was something like 65% possession. And basically, without that sort of dynamic pace in wide areas, it made it hard for Saint-Etienne to play on the counter with Nice having so much of the ball. So, but I mean, again, what are you going to do? There isn't a creative central presence for Saint-Etienne. I mean, they had that last year with Valentin Acerec on loan, but obviously he's come back to Nice and scored. Yeah, it's this team that I think they need to. I mean, it looked like this time last winter that they had done well in investing in Tanan and that they had a real player, but obviously he's sort of been found out. And I think that they need to look for a creative attacking talent. I mean, I think that. Obvious candidate doesn't spring to mind, but I think maybe looking abroad to bring in some sort of a creative playmaker really makes sense. I mean, the midfield's solid enough, defense is solid, the fullbacks are decent. In Beric and Rue, you have strikers who are, if not great, capable on their day, but there's no real attacking threat besides Hamuma, and again, he's really more of a wide player than he is a playmaker. So I don't know. I think that obviously Galtier has placed more emphasis on the Europa League, okay? And I credit to him for that because it's been a source of frustration for me personally that French teams have not taken that competition as seriously. But, pardon me. That being said, sorry. Yeah, exactly. My yawn there is my approximation of his style of football. There's no reason that this team shouldn't show more creative intent.
And
This football doesn't keep you awake.
Yeah.
No, not pretty dire.
And jumping off that, and there's a number of teams that would kill to have someone like Christophe Galtier, who's had numerous successes at Saint-Etienne. But is his time running thin? Has he maybe taken them as far as he can, Philip?
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, I don't see them unless they change something. I don't see them finishing where they usually finish. So they finished the last 4 seasons. They finished one time 5th and 4th and 5th and 6th. So that's 4 seasons between 4th and 6th, which are Europa League places. Now I know that the season is long and that you'll need someone to finish above Saint-Etienne. Top 4 is pretty much settled. I don't know. You've got Bordeaux, who seem to be quite solid, to be actually exactly like Saint-Etienne. Not too bad. A decent goalkeeper, not too bad at the back. Not great creativity, but probably even better than Saint-Etienne. So yeah, I can see some on the sides. Rennes, Toulouse, probably even Marseille if they get moving and start to bag a couple of wins. So yeah, I think time was already. We were already asking ourselves a question about Galtier Saint-Etienne last season, but this season I think it's even more pressing. So it is possible that it is his last season with Les Verts.
And let's go back to the current leaders of the league, Nice, Eric. And you've mentioned him already, having been on loan at Saint-Etienne last season, and that's Valentin Esseric, who scored the goal. And he had a pretty good game, and that shows you Nice's depth, even without someone like Mario Balotelli leading the line.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they're Donis, I think, is impressed in flashes he's got on too. I think that there really is. Because Yellow was on the bench as well. I think that Nice can be over reliant on certain players. I'm thinking particularly of likes of Seri, Pereira, Balotelli to some extent, but they've shown again that they can put a performance together when they need to, and that's really the bottom line. That's why they continue to be in first place. It's grinding out these results that's what makes a team a championship contender, and especially playing away to Saint-Etienne is never an easy task. The Chaudron is one of the best atmospheres in France, and again, with Balotelli absent, some players are coming back from injury. There could have been an excuse for Nice to start to slide down the table, a la Toulouse, but that wasn't the case, and they responded really well in a tough situation, and credit to them. There's more to come. They still have to play PSG, but I think this team remains a bona fide championship contender until something shows otherwise, and it's not looking like that being the case, as they seem to have ridden out some of these injuries and absences in the recent past.
Yeah, and getting to this stage of the season already in mid-November, yes, but 13 weeks in, as we start looking towards that sort of winter break, to be in this position is a really good positive for them, and hopefully they can keep it up. But we'll finish this week with Bordeaux, who we've not spoken about much this season, but have been relatively mixed, shall we say, is probably the best word to describe them under Jocelyn Gourvenec. They drew 1-1 against Guingamp despite missing a penalty and conceding a late equaliser. They've lost only once in their last 8, but 2 of those have only been wins. Every other game has been a draw, except from that 2-0 defeat from Paris Saint-Germain. What have you thought to Bordeaux in this first third of the season, Philip?
That they seem to be much more organised than last season. Gourvenec is, I think he's had quite a lot of things to put straight. He did buy a decent centre back in Igor Lefchuk. I mean, probably didn't have the best start of life in France, but he really is now the the boss in that defense, saying that he was at fault for Guingament's very late equaliser. So 7 minutes of stoppage time, Briand equalised from a throw-in, and Lefchuk, who's a centre back, inexplicably just goes towards the throw-in and leaves space for Briand to head it in. So it really is a shame. But then you've got the midfield, you've got Varda, you've got Toulalan, you've got Plazil, experienced guys, good football players, good ball players, could go forward, and Menez has to stay fit for a couple of games, and if he does that, they do have a chance. Holland can score. He proved that a game at Lyon. He can score a couple of goals. So why not go back to Europe? But the problem will be, of course, is will they get into Europa League? Will they want to be in Europa League? But good omens.
And Eric, they're currently sat in 7th despite their kind of indifferent form. What's your take been on Jocelyn Gourvenec and how he's adapted to this Bordeaux team that does have a number of interesting attacking young players and some decent defensive players as well? They're not short-handed in any sense, but they've not really shifted out of third gear, it seems sometimes.
Yeah, I will credit Gourvenec for improving the team's defense. It was often at 6s and 7s last season, but he really is struggling to get the best out of attack. He seems a bit hamstrung by, particularly his use of Roldan and of Menez. I don't think that the system he's played in recent past has gotten the best out of them. Playing Menez off of a pairing of Roldan and Camino yesterday didn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense tactically, and there was not a whole lot there in terms of attacking impetus, and Menez in particular was really dreadful. I just don't know. I think that he's not being given enough autonomy. He doesn't feel like he has enough autonomy to set this team up in a way that makes sense. So, yeah, it's a pretty frustrating situation given the club, have a lot of interesting young players and should be doing better than they are. But I'm not sure how much of that's down to the manager or what sort of leash he's being given to experiment.
And Philip, just sort of to end this discussion about Bordeaux, where do you think they might be European contenders in this current league? And I mean, a loss can send you to about 12th at the moment. So are they genuine contenders for that kind of position, or are they maybe not quite at the pace and maybe need some additions come the winter time?
I think it's more in terms of other sides not lasting the pace or not being as performing as Bordeaux will be in the second half of the season. Guingamp seemed to be dropping more points at home. They were very lucky not to lose yesterday. Not being that great away from home. It's exactly the same profile for Rennes, and I don't know. Just see Bordeaux getting those draws away from home and transforming these draws into wins. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Bordeaux finish 5th. And
Eric, do you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I absolutely. I think that there is, there's enough talent on paper for this team to be, 4th or 5th, and I don't know.
4th would be a stretch, though.
This season, yes, but I think we couldn't have really expected Nice to perform where they are. I mean, I think that on paper before the season, we might have looked at Monaco, PSG, Lyon. I mean, did Bordeaux have the best squad on paper before the season started? There might be something to that.
And then it'd be something to keep an eye on if you're not playing particularly well, but you're still staying around in and around those places. When you do start hitting form, it might start getting interesting. We'll keep an eye on that for certain. But that's all we have time for this week. My thanks to Philip, Eric, and everyone listening at home. Join us for the preview show hosted by Eric on Thursday evening, and we will see you for the main show again at the same time, same place next week. A bientôt and goodbye.